Traders, Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com, November the 1st, 2020. In this edition of your weekend video newsletter, we'll discuss the indices, all of which took a shellacking last week, but closed off of the absolute lows of the week. FANG stocks and growth stocks alike took it on the chin, leaving most of our indicators either bearish or neutral. Only two indicators are bullish for this week, with the only safety trade being the US dollar moving higher last week. Gold continues to trade lower, in addition to crude oil, which gave us our first really bearish week. Not to be undone, the heat map showed a lot of contraction. Most of the sectors were moving lower, in addition to what we saw in the international markets. Regardless of the flows that we saw in option volume going into the close on Friday, we didn't see any options data that suggests any real panic. In addition, we don't see much reason to pick a direction before 11/3, as the event could trigger a very sharp directional trend, especially in options and open interest. So that leaves us with a neutral stance. Momentum is bearish, with support and resistance as noted. SPY on the 60-minute time frame showing that descending pattern that continues with a lift towards the end of the day and the last hour on volume, with stochastics oversold and rising, lending to a potential bounce coming into Monday morning, printing what looks like a near hammer on Friday at support from a previous bounce back in September, with RSI still below 50, giving us more of a bearish look with the potential for a bounce. So we'll have to wait for Monday to see what happens, as we are 10% below the previous high that we saw back in late August at 358.75, measured from the absolute low of the day on Friday. That said, we do have stochastics oversold, so if we start to turn higher, that could lend for a rise into the election. Though I'm not putting much faith in that, I'll most likely take on more risk after the election, not before. So if price action does look a little dicey on Monday morning, there is potential that we could continue to hedge or add two hedges in SPXU, SQQQ, and SDOW going into the election, as volume has certainly picked up in SPXU, though it is a little bit overbought at the present time. In addition to that, we are running into that resistance, which flips over to that support that we just saw on the S&P 500 spiders. That leaves the NASDAQ 100 in a precarious position too. We could lose the moving averages here, shown on this weekly time frame, and test the lows that we saw back in September, as momentum continues to drift lower, MACD finishing below the signal line over the last few weeks, while volume continues to increase. IWM was looking better during the beginning of the week, but has failed and has dropped below the 21-day, right above the 50 days, sort of in no man's land at the present time. So there's a possibility we could test the 50-day, but for right now, IWM could go either way. One of the caveats for the bears, of course, is what we see on the S&P 500 equal weight index, where no stock is more important than any other. We did see some buying at the end of the day on Friday, a bounce on Thursday. The number of stocks trading above their 50-period moving average has dropped down to 30.4%. So that's potential fuel for a bounce. If CCI is any indication, when it gets oversold and turns back to the north, that gives us a potential trigger. We're watching for that in the short term. If that were to happen, we'd see the number of stocks above their 50-period moving average start to move higher again, and potential for a retest of the 50-day moving average overhead. In addition, we're waiting for VIX to give us a signal as well. It's been red all week on the 60-minute time frame, especially towards the end of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now it looks like we're about to emerge. That'll give us a green signal, potentially, for a follow-through bounce into Monday. with VIX at highs on the weekly, looking for a fade. In addition to the S&P 500 A50R, a number of stocks above their 50-period moving average drifting to the green zone, which is interpreted as an area where we might bounce. We also see that with the NASDAQ 100 A50R in the green zone already. These have corresponded to bounces in the past. We can see advanced decline for both the NYSE and the NASDAQ 100, in addition to the indices starting to line up with areas where we've seen this dip before lead to bounces in the NASDAQ 100 right at support again. So all is not lost for the bulls, but I would wait until after the election before taking on any additional risk. We can also see reasons to be a bit more bullish after the election if the 10-year yield continues rising. We trailed off here back when the coronavirus hit right around 16. We're presently half that now, but we are rising off the lows, higher highs, higher lows. That corresponds to appreciation in the S&P 500 in the past when the 10-year was rising, reflecting the fade that we've been seeing in the longer end of the curve as well, with the 20-year bond below its moving averages and dropping on this weekly time frame. Also, the 7-10-year bond daily time frame continues to show fading as yields rise and bonds move lower, with the summation being bonds don't appear to be a safety trade per se. US dollar is rising a bit, so there might be some buying in the US dollar as it strengthens coming off the lows, with momentum increasingly bullish back above its signal line, which is impacting commodities like gold. This continues this descending pattern, the 50-day moving average, the green line rolling over, containing price, showing that there's a lack of a safety trade or concern here. While copper did take a breather last week, the monthly is above the breakout zone, waiting for a Wednesday signal after the election is over. And late votes continue to come in. We'll watch for any kind of turmoil in the election process, as the Electoral College doesn't meet until December, while positive correlation commodities like crude oil gave us one of the most bearish weeks last week going into the election. So if you're bullish and want to see crude oil bounce this week, not follow through and move lower. Bottom line, commodities are mixed, but there is no safety trade that we can identify at the present time in either bonds or in commodities. The sector heat map shows and reflects the bearish tone in the markets at the present time, read from left to right each week. This is updated, reflecting also the international markets weakness coming in as the sector heat map and the international heat map becomes more bearish, telling you to be cautious going into the election week. Despite the bearish tone in the sector heat map, XLY-XLP ratio continues to move higher, reflecting a lack of defensive posture on the part of institutions going into the election. Do note in the opening monologue we have shown fewer stocks that are set up going into the week from the IBD 50, Market Smith Growth 250, relative strengths stocks at new highs, and the stocks that are being traded by institutions in green, followed by the Dow Industrials. There's a dozen or so that look okay. Therefore, what we're looking for is a follow-through in price action. Applied Materials, for example, a higher low. We got stochastics turning from oversold. MACD will turn as a function of price as well. We're seeing more selling volume over the last 2 weeks. If this does move it back above the 50-day, the 21-day, and RSI can get back above 50, stocks like Applied Materials might follow through. In addition to what we saw with Booz Allen Hamilton, BAH, back on the IBD 50 list, bouncing fairly hard on Thursday. Volume coming in, stochastics turning from oversold. MACD is about to cross as well. Looking for a push and a move back above the 21-day moving average, and then a test of the 50-day. So we're looking for the same thing with Cadence Design, CDNS, oversold stochastic, MACD about to turn. Volume is showing that there's been selling for the last couple of weeks. We're looking for a push off this volume by price band. No guarantee it'll happen, and certainly we're thinking that it might happen after the election, not before. So that leaves us with Monday and Tuesday with possibly no bounce. Digital Turbine shows potential for a bounce as well. With stochastics turning from oversold, MACD will turn as a function of price. Volume was a little bit above average, to say the least, on Friday, but we did produce a hammer, so we're looking for a bounce. Dollar General consolidating right at the 50-day, looking for a bounce here as well. Gold stocks like Franco-Nevada and Kirkland Lake showing potential for a bounce, though I'm thinking that it's going to get rejected at the 21-day and certainly at the 50-day if we do bounce, unless gold starts to make a move above its 50-day moving average on the daily time frame as well. If chip stocks do bounce, we're watching for LRCX to hold the 50-day. RSI is right at 50, so this could turn either way. Stochastics is oversold, we're looking for a bounce. Logitech, LOGI, starting to look like it might bounce as well at the 21-day. Perkin-Elmer also looks very good, one of the nicer looking setups, remaining above the 9 and 21-day moving average last week. 50 days below, we've got volume by price as support. Looking for a push higher this week as stochastics turns higher from 20, moving through 50, and MACD crossed on above average volume. Probably one of the nicer setups going into this week. PKI. ServiceNow also oversold on the stochastic. RSI is still at 50. We saw buyers step up on Friday, looking for a bounce back above the 21-day. Stochastics will continue higher if that's the case, and look for MACD to cross and move higher. If value hunters do look for semiconductors on their lows to be bought, I'd watch for Taiwan Semiconductor to hold strength. It didn't pull back as dramatically as some other chip stocks did. RSI is still below 50, but if we can hold above the 50-day moving average and bounce this week, stochastics will turn and so will MACD. So we'll watch for stocks like TSM to continue higher, along with Tempur-Pedic, TPX, showing strength last week on Friday, bouncing at buy and buy price support. RSI looks like it's going to push back through 50. Trading on the trend in the residential home market, where a lot of people are still moving, buying new mattresses for their new homes. Stochastics is turning, looking for MACD to turn as well. Friday we finished higher on above average volume. Additional stocks that showed relative strength last week: ACHC, Acadia Healthcare, looking for follow through in some of the healthcare providers. This one gapped up on huge volume last week. Stochastics is turning up. Potentially, we could see a follow through on the gap and go, along with CLGX, Core Logic, which we pointed out on Wednesday, was on the relative strength scan, flagging, looking for a follow through. As the stock trades above average volume, MACD has turned and stochastics is moving higher. First Republic Bank also showing relative strength. Nice bounce on Wednesday, held the 21-day RSIs above 50, volume coming in. Stochastics beginning to turn at 50, price holding the 21-day. Looking for a follow-through day, potentially a third white soldier and a move back up to the highs. The same thoughts that we had for LRCX and Taiwan Semiconductor, looking for some of these to bounce in the semiconductor group. As LSCC shows above average volume, stochastics turning at 50. Pent Air also showing strength, holding the 9 and 21-day moving averages, RSI above 50, volume increasing, stochastics turning. Quanta Services had a nice day on Thursday, looking for a follow-through. Friday kind of just held its own at the 9 EMA, looking for a follow-through this week. Sony also showing relative strength, back up to the highs. We'll watch for a handle potentially or a breakout. Volume has been obvious as institutions pick up shares. MACD is above its signal line and rising. Stochastic is now embedded and overbought. Southern Copper, looking for a follow-through. We identified this one also on Wednesday. It followed through Thursday and a doji on Friday. Texas Instruments, looking for this semiconductor to bounce as well at the 50-day moving average. Stochastics oversold. Followed by Temkin Steel, which looks pretty strong coming off of the 50-day moving average. Volume increased on Thursday and Friday. A third white soldier is possible. Stochastics is turning. Looking for a breakout this week as RSI continues higher. Volume by price support held and reversed. Price action moving higher on Thursday. Zendesk also had a good Friday. Relative strength. RSI back above 50. Volume increasing. Stochastics turning and MACD reversing and moving higher with price. Looking for a follow through on the breakout and a continuation to 52-week highs this week, most likely after the election. In addition, we saw some stocks like American Express on the Dow Industrials at a previous low. Stochastics oversold, looking like it's going to turn. Boeing has the potential to turn. Caterpillar, a nice setup right along the 50-day moving average, bouncing with stochastics turning as well. Cisco looking like it might bounce. Stochastics oversold. DuPont also looks good. Disney looks good. Goldman Sachs at a previous low. Stochastics oversold is what I'm watching for. Home Depot looking for a bounce. IBM looking for a bounce at the lows. Intel, if semiconductors find some bargain hunters, this is one that might get some activity this week. We also saw potential in Coca-Cola. 3M, note where stochastics is in each of these cases. Raytheon oversold, previous low. Stochastics oversold. Verizon at a previous high, coming back. Stochastics oversold, looking for a bounce. And Walgreens Boots Alliance, which looks like it could bounce as well, with stochastics oversold. Okay, traders, that's going to do it for me. This is because of bidding coming to you from theclosingprint.com. Sunday, the 1st of November. The election is Tuesday. Look for your watch list later tonight around 11:30 on the East Coast, 8:30 on the West Coast. Bottom line, I won't be doing much going into Monday until we see what institutions have in mind. I'm thinking it's not going to be a lot, as many will be waiting for the election on Tuesday before doing anything, and the outcome into the weeks that follow. Take care. I hope this helps, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.